Good morning. Welcome to the best morning of your weekend. It's really great to see all you here. And let me just shut that off. It's great to have all of you here. Thank you for everybody who's been messaging me overnight and on Twitter. And I'm getting a lot of messages about the whole positive frame thing and that people like the idea that we can really address some of the issues we're all concerned about from that positive frame. So thank you for everybody for all of those messages. I greatly appreciate it. It's helping to encourage me to continue with all of this because this will build into something else, I promise. But good morning and welcome and congratulations to joining what is, in my opinion, the best, most positive frame and the most positive stream on acknowledging the freedoms that we have that many people in the world don't have and how we can focus on expanding those freedoms in the future. And I think that's where we're going to be going with a lot of these things, and this is why it's important for us to share ideas, what's been going on behind the scenes for a number of issues, and I really appreciate all of you that have been joining in. A couple of things, obviously like, share, subscribe if you can, and share it to your friends, family, whatever, because these conversations are going to be ever expanding and ongoing and increasingly relevant as time goes by. If you're not on Locals, honkingforfreedom.locals.com, the promo code is FREE, capital letters and the number 6. Many of you have gotten it to work. Some of you haven't. I have a long to-do list. I'm getting through it. I spend a little bit of time once in a while trying to figure it out, and it just doesn't make sense to me so far. I'm going to send a message over to tech support, some of the people I know there at Locals, and see if they have a solution to this. But anyways, thank you all for being here, and thank you for all your wonderful messages about positivity and, you know, the whole message of peace and love and unity and freedom and also like not admonishing people who disagree with us philosophically or politically. It's important that we all kind of reach out to each other and start to hear each other. So not only do we need that from people on the left, or let's say the more extreme end of the political spectrum, but we also need it in ourselves as well. And I think we feel a lot better when we do. I've been having a lot of conversations lately with people on the other side or the other sides, you know, my theory on the political spectrum. And I don't know, it really helps reduce the stress on my end. You know, we get to a wall where we're just not going to agree on something. It's like, great, okay, turn the corner. Let's go somewhere else and talk about something else. And I actually had that experience again last night at a party, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later on. The Twitter live stream tonight, I've invited a couple of the truckers who I know, American truckers, and it's hopefully you guys can hear me on Locals. This is one of those days where your Laval mic falls directly into your coffee just before you click go live. And so hopefully this thing still works and the crackling hasn't gotten worse. I'm going to get a splitter that will make the audio quality even better on Locals. I'm working on it. I'm just trying to find the right one. So thank you. So anyways, tonight there is a live stream. Sorry, live stream. A Twitter space that I'll be hosting along with Dave O and probably a number of other people. If you've gone to my Twitter spaces, you'll know who some of these people are. We are going to be talking with a couple of truckers, at least one for sure, Gord, who wrote that article in Newsweek about the Freedom Convoy and about the media. And I really appreciated it because Gord was in communique with me regularly through direct messaging during the convoy, him and some of the other truckers, and Tyler, who's friends with Brian, who led the American convoy. So really good guys, but you know, trucking schedules can be quite intense, especially when the economy is faltering right now. People are worried about getting enough loads in while they can, because everybody's worried about another 2008, which was really difficult for all industries, including the trucking industry. So we're going to talk about that stuff tonight, what we're seeing on the ground in terms of the economy. Do we see the economy turning from a trucker perspective? And just things about Freedom Convoy and kind of their perspective and the American perspective of what was going on and where we are now and all that sort of stuff, because they're dealing with a lot of the same struggles we're dealing with in Canada. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to talk about before we get to the main thing I just wanted to touch on, which is this week, Mark Zuckerberg, who I know many of you love dearly, Mark Zuckerberg, who I actually have some empathy for his position. I know people get upset at me for that. I'm not a big fan of his, but I'm also sympathetic to the stresses that he's under and some of the pressures that he is under. Anyways, he was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and he explained that the FBI contacted Facebook about the Hunter Biden laptop from hell. Remember all of that? Good morning, James. Good to see you, brother. That it was very interesting. I didn't watch the whole episode. I just watched that part of that segment of the interview, and it was interesting because he explains, and if I can be charitable to both the FBI and Facebook, I'll go after them in a second. But let's just try to look at the other side. Again, this is what you get from talking to people who have different philosophical and political worldviews. Let's try to be charitable towards the FBI, even though for some of us it might be difficult right now, given some of the theatrics. We have to remember it's a huge bureaucracy. I don't know how many people work for the FBI, but it's tens of thousands of employees that they have. It's a bureaucracy and institution like all other bureaucracies, and there can be both bad actors and good actors within it. And it's when they do something bad, that gets amplified because that's deviating from the norm of what you would expect, right? That's why whenever we see, the left falls victim to that all the time with their, defund the police because there was one bad police officer. Well, it's a whole bureaucracy of thousands of people, depending on the police force you're part of. Like, it's the one guy always gets amplified, and he gets amplified because that deviates from the norm, right? At least that's what we hope. And so when you hear his explanation, he explained it he was very careful with his words. I was quite impressed, actually. Again, I'm not a supporter of Zuckerberg, but in terms of his delivery, where he basically explained that, the FBI had concerns. They had national security concerns. And again, we're going to be charitable. I'm not saying I agree with that. But in being charitable, let's say they legitimately did have concerns, or somebody within a department of the FBI had legitimate concerns and reached out to Facebook and said to Facebook, we think this is a national security issue. We're not sure, just to let you know as we're investigating. Now, we know it's probably not true, or there's probably a derivative of that, but that's not the point. I'm not arguing that. If that was the case, let's assume that was legitimately the view of the FBI. Would that be so unreasonable for them to reach out to a large platform that has, a large percentage of the world on it, to say, hey, this thing's going around, we don't know if it's true or not, just so you know. And what they did apparently is they didn't shadow ban. I mean, they shouldn't be shadow banning anything, but it was lower in the queue. It was harder to find. You could find it, but it wasn't being boosted by the algorithm. I disagree with what they did, but that's not completely, I don't want to say it's not completely crazy. Again, I vehemently disagree with what they did, but if you step into their world frame and how they view the world, I can understand why they think it's reasonable, right? And I think that's an exercise we all can do, and Zuckerberg was a good example. Now, we can also be negative, like many of us are, and just say, yeah, it's complete BS. They're completely politicized. And because we saw what happened with Mar-a-Lago recently and many other issues that have happened over the past several years. and say this is just the latest example. And that's the problem. Because they keep doing it, it just makes people more and more skeptical. If this was the first time, then it would be a lot easier for even people who oppose them to absorb it and digest it and whatever, right? Or to accept it. So, but it's interesting. I was thinking that in the context of our Freedom Convoy protest in Ottawa, how much interference was coming from the Canadian government and Canadian law enforcement. Well, we're much smaller, so law enforcement is basically intelligence, the same thing. I think it's the OPP has got the largest intelligence bureau in all of Canada and all the bureaucracies, if I'm not mistaken. Either them or the RCMP, one of the two. How much did they utilize a similar strategy? Like, did they reach out to mainstream media and say, yeah, we think this is a security concern, and maybe some of these people are, bad actors. We know some of them. They've worked as informants, for example, and just to alert the fake news media that this is what it is. Is it possible that the fake news media smear, that narrative, came from law enforcement or intelligence institutions or agencies? Well, of course. Like we saw with the Bezmenov tapes, that the KGB and intelligence in general. It's not the James Bond, it's not the spy movies. 85% of what they do is just propaganda, and now propaganda is so much easier to do online. And then, coupled to that, the fact that, I just reread and re-edited back and forth with my editor midway through the book. I think it's chapter 22 or 23, when things started to really go downhill. We didn't realize it at the time, but in retrospect, you realize, that's the moment that people were there who shouldn't have been there. But do you think it's possible that, much like intelligence services reach out to Facebook in the United States, that they would do the same thing in Canada with the fake news? I.e., is it possible that the narrative, the fake news narrative about the Freedom Convoy, came from people connected in law enforcement? Is that possible? Well, of course it's possible. Is that what happened? I don't know. I have no idea. You don't know. None of us know. Well, none of us will have any idea. But I think these are important thought exercises. I'm going through, and we're doing like a second draft of and a rewrite of the book before we send it to some people that will be reviewing it. And it's interesting to go through these things, and for me to go through these thought experiments of, well, who were some of these people that were there? How were they connected? Were they connected to law enforcement or the government? Like, do you think it's possible that during the Freedom Convoy, we had people from either law enforcement or intelligence services or intelligence departments in police agencies in Canada, that they were embedded with the convoy? Absolutely, 100%, 100%. Is that who sabotaged it? I don't think so. But, when the elderly lady was trampled by the horses on the walker, and I mentioned this before, there was her and there was another guy. And the other guy is a ghost. We had a few journalists trying to track this guy down, checking all the hospitals, checking everybody who was there, looking at photos, trying to do comparative analysis, reaching out to people that were in the protest, talking to people in the Freedom Convoy protest, people who were there, people who saw him, whatever. And the biggest thing is, the guy clearly was severely injured because some of those reporters were there standing right in front of him, and they can see he was massively injured. But he was just scooped up and taken away. Well, does that mean he was a cop? Probably. Because we do know there were a lot of them. So that guy was an undercover RCMP, which all indicators seem to show that. Then they were all over the convoy. We're hundreds of people that were just trying to stop the bleeding and to Band-Aid all the issues that were happening. We didn't know who was. I mean, we did our best. We hoped that people were honest actors. And I think most people, aside from, a handful of people, were, and they had our best interests, minus, again, a handful of people, maybe a couple of organizations. But I thought it was just really interesting. And now we see all these, once again, we're heading into the commission, which is the government on trial, not us. It's the government. And not on trial, but you know what I mean. It's an investigation into the government, which is the equivalent. Their response, and they're desperate for a boogeyman, much like they were desperate for a boogeyman during Canada Day, right? I put a tweet out that, or a few tweets out and some messaging out leading up to Canada Day, maybe 6 weeks before, saying something to the effect, could we get 5 million people to Ottawa? And I know there's some people who lost their shit and thought we were actually planning that. So we saw these people, in their RVs going across Canada trying to recruit people for some sort of, January 6th reenactment for Canada Day, and it failed miserably. Well, those same people seem to be back. We're heading into this commission, whatever it is, and the government needs a boogeyman. So what are they going to do? Well, they turn on the guys again, the informants, the people who are desperate for money, and go make yourself famous on social media. Let's entrap some people, and we'll pay you a few dollars for that. That's how informants work. It's rare that informants work on more than one case, and I guess this is technically one case because it's all about the Freedom Convoy. But the fact that it's so brazen to keep trying this over and over again, anyways, some of the stupidest people in the world work in government, and that's just the way it is. And anybody in government, I think, who has a brain will agree to that and nod their head right now. So let's get on to some positivity. And because this is the best day of your weekend. This is the most positive day of your weekend, and we're going to start. And it's also the beginning of the week, so this is a good frame for which to start the week. And, last night I was at a birthday party for a family member. And there's a lot of people I never met before. A lot of this family members, good friends, longtime friends, colleagues at work, all that sort of stuff. And it was really amazing to see, and I'm sure many of you know this, but it's just about remembering this, that what's important in life? Is it that Prime Minister Blackface is the most racist person to hold office in Canadian history? Is that what's important? Or is it your family and your friends and sitting around the barbecue and having a couple of drinks and eating and talking well into the night, into like 12, 1 o'clock at night for like 6-7 hours, which is what I was doing last night. I was planning only to go for a couple of hours, and I was there. I didn't get home till quite late last night, which is why I had to throw this all together in my Laval mic. Ended up my coffee this morning after a couple of hours of editing as of 6 in the morning. But anyways, and it just dawned on me. I know a lot of you who were participants in the convoy, who brought your families to the convoy. I know you all know that it's important, that family and friends are important. But do we all really know it? And does everybody know it? Because if everybody doesn't know it, if those people who live in our streets that are kind of miserable and are always politicized, especially where I live, everybody is, a political hot potato at some point. Well, not at some point, frequently. Because it's a very politicized, very leftist sort of neighborhood. And there's a lot of regular, normal people, but you can tell the people who are suffering. And they're suffering because they're always focusing on some sort of political narrative, fixing the world, whatever it is. And they're lacking what many of us have, what I had last night, and what we all had during the Freedom Convoy, which was the fact that people had either their nuclear family, their extended family, their friends, or they met friends, or they met people at the convoy, and they formed relationships. And I think, for me, that's the best thing that occurred out of it. I mean, I remember I think I explained on this stream or in a Twitter space, that, good morning, Sonia, that I went to a barbecue reunion in a couple hours outside of Toronto from people who were Toronto. I'm sounding like an American now, from Toronto. And it was a group of people, I don't know, 100 people, maybe more, that were having a massive barbecue together at somebody's place. And they all met each other during the convoy. And they stayed together for 3 weeks. And they helped each other out. And they grabbed each other food. And they helped each other get fuel. And they formed what I think and what I hope are going to be lifetime friendships. And they all talked about how that experience is something that really changed their lives. And I think it's because they extended their social circle, their network of friends. They found from people from all different parts of the province that they never would have met before. And I think that's kind of the spirit of what we wanted from the Freedom Convoy. Yes, it was about ending mandates and about ending the ArriveCan app. But even more important, it was those friends and relationships and bonds that people formed. And I'm still looking for, I've mentioned this during the convoy, I know there are some people, because I saw some people, picking each other up and meeting each other and whatever, younger people. I know there are people that formed not just friendships, but relationships, people who went into the convoy single and came out of the convoy no longer single. And will those relationships blossom into something more fruitful, into marriages and kids and family and that sort of thing? And I think that's why it was important to have that message of peace, love, unity, and freedom, because when you step out of that emotional state of anxiety, you're going to probably hear me talk a lot about this over the next little while as we build to something. But when people step out of that state of anxiety into, pleasure, happiness, being relaxed, that's when they open themselves up to new relationships, friendships, or romantic relationships, whatever they are. And, I saw this video somebody sent me last week. I posted it. I'm going to be posting excerpts of it regularly. I may even do a watch party for it. It's a 45-minute long video of on the ground, directly on the ground during the Freedom Convoy, showing the dancing parties, showing everybody hanging out and getting together and just cheering about peace and talking about loving each other. And I got to tell you, it made me feel amazing and a little bit, a little bit down. And the reason I felt a little down is because myself and Tamara and everybody else were dealing with putting out fires all day long and threats of the police. We're going to raid. Are they going to raid? Are they not going to raid? How do we protect people? It was constant. But because we were dealing with that every waking hour, we didn't get to participate in it. I think Tamara got to a little bit. I was worse because I was incapacitated with a broken ankle. What am I going to do? The only time I really could see large groups of people after I broke my ankle was when I went to speak on the stage each Sunday after Pastor Hildebrand gave his sermon. And so I saw that video, and that video was important and touching for me because that's becoming my first experience of being on the ground there and seeing what you guys were all doing while you were cheering on all the truckers and cheering everybody and supporting them. I wish I could have gone. I wish I could have gone to one of those dance parties. I think that would have been a lot of fun. So I missed that part of the convoy. And those of you who participated in that, you're so lucky. You really are. And I realized that when I watched that video. But I think we all did our best, despite people throwing knives in all of our backs. And also the reason I keep bringing up the people who sabotaged us and threw knives in our backs and all that sort of stuff, which I think we'll uncover that. I want to hear some of what your ideas and responses are over time, but. The reason I keep bringing it up is it's not about me or Tamara. They sabotaged you. It was you they sabotaged. It was the truckers on the ground that they screwed over. Because we had the most peaceful protest in Canadian history, the largest, most peaceful protest in Canadian history. And the saboteurs that got involved, that essentially ruined the Freedom Convoy prematurely to help blackface Trudeau, they screwed the truckers. And they screwed all of you. And that's why it's important. And that's why I'm not dropping it. So, very important. Sorry, was that positive? I'm trying to... I apologize for a little bit of seriousness, but it's sincere. I mean, I felt so bad when all of that was going, and now that it's becoming very evident that it was premeditated and it was planned ad hoc as they were going, but yeah, we'll get to that over time. So, okay, questions and comments, and if you have any other comments and questions, just throw it in the live chat. And thanks for joining. I love having you guys here. I know it's Sunday. There's not a cloud in the sky, or almost no cloud in the sky. There's a few cirrus clouds, yes, but it's a beautiful day out. I just stepped out to run down to the street to grab something, and I didn't really want to come back in here and spend the day inside, which I'm going to have to do, of reading chapters of the book and doing some more edits and then sending it back to John and then sending back and forth. But, you know, esta la vida mía. So, questions, comments. I just threw down a couple things because, again, I was running out of time and I didn't want to be late. So, first, this is in reference to a question that was asked yesterday about the media, and particularly about rebel media and right-wing media. So he starts off by saying, yes, no one is perfect in journalism. That is correct. And perfection is challenging. Sonia says, beautiful day here and hot. Where are you, Sonia, by the way? Because here it's not all... I mean, it's not like Dominican or Miami hot, but it's a little bit warm. I'm curious where you are. So he goes on to say, I don't know why Rebel and others don't just straight up adopt Canadian Broadcast Standards Council Code of Journalistic Ethics. Interesting. Rebel's reporting of their own narrative is easily fixed, and adopting the CBSE Code of Ethics would be the best way to fight back against media disinformation and the rub in the face of the CBC and other legacy news. They could put in their intro, unlike legacy media, we actually adopt and take to heart CBSC's codes of ethics. I don't really know the codes of ethics, to be entirely honest, but I get your point. I understand your point. And it's funny, I had a long conversation yesterday about Rebel News, and I'll put the video in the chat. And it was very interesting, and think about this for a second. So we did, Tamara and I and Chris Barber, did the first press conference on the weekend at the Swiss Hotel is where we did it. And we had Epoch Times and True North, National Telegraph, a bunch of independent creators, Cian Bexty from Countersignal. I'm going to feel bad if I miss. Rupa was there, who she was there on behalf of the National Post. I think in the capacity of the National Post because she's a freelancer. And a few other people. Persian news agency that Salman knew, and Salman was the whole bunch of... The room was full. It was packed with reporters. And Rebel News didn't show up. So, okay, fine. And just as we finished, because that news conference went on for 2 hours and 15 minutes, if I'm not mistaken, because I don't do those 15-minute BS scripted press conferences. I'll do a full 2 hour long, which, by the way, do you think I should do one of those during the commission in Ottawa? I'm more than willing to if there's interest. But anyways, so we finished the interview, and then I got a call from Alexandra from Rebel News saying, I'm very sorry we missed the press conference. Can you do an interview with us? And I said, yeah, sure. Tamara's still here. We're still in the room. Come by. When will you be here? And she said, I can be there in, 15 or 20 minutes, whatever. So they clearly rushed to get there because you could see they're all out of breath when they came upstairs. And they showed up, I guess, about 15, 20 minutes later. I don't know. Time is hard to keep track of when things were that busy. And we sat down, Tamara and I, and we did an hour-long interview with Rebel News. So it was an exclusive interview with Rebel News. Now, what's the context of that? The context was my email addresses were blowing up with media inquiries and requests from all over the world, from Germany, Italy, Australia, France, Israel, England, Japan. I'm trying to think. There's so many different countries. And everything from the BBC to Fox News, because I'd already been on it, to ABC in Australia, mainstream media. Yeah, a lot of them were fake and whatever, but everybody in the world, every major news agency was all over the story and wanted to talk to us and to interview us. And as you know, I froze out a lot of I was very picky with who would have access to us for a whole bunch of different reasons, logical reasons, which I've outlined some of them here. I outlined them, actually I have a whole chapter of that in the book. That might be a Substack on its own. But here we were in the Swiss hotel. We just finished the first press conference. Rebel Media shows up, and we sat down it was 45 minutes to an hour, somewhere between there. And it was myself and Tamara in our full context. So there's no ambiguity, what the protest is about, why we're here, all that sort of stuff. It was really great. Alexandra was great. It was Alexandra, Lincoln, and I can't remember the other guy's name. He was really nice too. I feel bad. But anyways, so we did this hour-long interview. And remember, the entire world media was bugging us to sit down and have a conversation. So we did with Rebel News. And then, so Alexandra, as we finished, I said, when are you going to put it up? What are you going to do? She said, well, I have to translate it into French. She was very excited about that. She wanted to get it into French. So I will let you know as soon as possible. Okay, cool. Let me know. And I said, like, I'm getting tens of thousands of messages a day. I'll try to keep an eye out for you. We traded Signal. And I said, just let me know over Signal and whatever. Next day goes by, nothing. The day after goes by. I said, I finally reached out to Alexandra. What's happening? Why didn't you release it? And she said, I don't know. I'm just waiting for approval and blah, blah, blah. Or I'm working on it. I'm doing the translation, whatever. And then it dies. And it got spiked. Ezra spiked the story. So we're right in the middle of the biggest news story on the planet. Rebel News has the exclusive interview with Tamara and myself when all media around want to interview us. And Ezra spikes the story and doesn't upload it. Or spikes the interview, doesn't upload it. Why? Why would you do that? And like, what is the motivation of doing that, right? Your business, you got to get, even if you disagreed with what we were doing, just the amount of clicks you'd get to your website, you'd want to upload that, but they didn't. And I don't understand. Then when Tamara was rearrested, I saw there was a tweet from Ezra with Tamara speaking for, 10 or 15 seconds, talking about, some people that were, their family was affected. Somebody died, during the COVID pandemic and the lockdowns that affect her. It's very, very emotional. And you can see my sleeve right next to Tamara because it's the same sweater I wore on Tucker Carlson. Sorry, it was a busy time. I was living out of a knapsack for that time of my life. It was the same sleeve on Tucker Carlson. So Ezra had the footage. He had the interview for an hour. But sat on. So I think I posted a tweet to Ezra saying, where's the rest of that interview? Why'd you never release it? Still no answer. We all have theories. People have told me different things as to kind of what goes on behind the scenes and, how politics works with different news agencies and whatever. But I never forgot that. I mentioned this yesterday, that, the two people that spiked interviews were Barry Weiss, and maybe because she said you guys are completely reasonable, or maybe it just didn't work for whatever reason, or she was told not to, and Ezra Levant with Rebel News. The exclusive interview on the biggest story on the planet, and he throw it down the toilet, down the memory hole. All right, good. So let's just remember that when we look at media from either side and we say they're biased or not biased, or one's good or one's not good, let's remember that. So anyways, I'm sure I'll talk more about that in the future. Question number 2 from Maga Bell Chen. Okay, thank you very much. It was just discussing politics in general, I guess is what it is. It's always divide and conquer, polarize everyone into believing the biggest threat is their neighbor who dresses yellow instead of purple. Yeah, good analogy. And then they go to great lengths to achieve discord and squabble amongst those suffering the most. Much love to you, and thank you for doing all that you've done. Yeah, I think that's the point. It's divide and conquer to get all of us, fighting with each other and in conflict. And that's why, from my perspective, and maybe I'm wrong, we need to focus on unity and talking to people we disagree with and showing empathy for each other and showing love for each other and just focusing on peace. That doesn't, exclude the fact that there are serious issues that we're all concerned about. Of course we're concerned about it. But we cannot fight from the state of emotional anxiety. And the way we get to peace and tranquility, to be able to think clearly and to fight, is by accepting and loving one another. So, good morning from the prairies. Good morning to the prairies. And Sonia says she is in Montreal. I haven't been to Montreal in quite some time. I would love to go back there. Used to have a lot of fun there when I was younger, and just the nightlife and the old city and stuff like that. And I'd love to go back there sometime soon. That's it for tonight. I got to get back to editing. I got another 8 chapters I have to edit and go through today before a series of meetings in the afternoon. But thank you, everybody, for coming and supporting us. There's going to be a lot more coming down the pipeline. There is the honkingforfreedom.com, which is an initiative in the Bitcoin space for those of you who know Bitcoin. And I don't want to say cryptocurrency because it's just Bitcoin. And I talk about that in the spaces. If you have any beginner questions to Bitcoin, why it's important and why it was important to the Freedom Convoy, you can check my Substack, BJdichter.substack.com. I did an article specifically titled Why Bitcoin was Important to the Freedom Movement, or to the Freedom Convoy. Follow me on Getter and Twitter. Don't be shy. Send me private messages. Sometimes I take a little time to get back to you. Right now I'm getting to the point now where I'm getting so many messages and so many calls from people. I just got a time block that I give myself a couple of hours within the week that I can just get back to people just because I'm so overloaded with work. Mine's BJdichter. Instagram, bjd.online, which is the same name as the YouTube channel. And locals, honkingforfreedom.locals.com, and Rumble as well. Just type in Honking for Freedom and you'll get to it. James, no, thank you, brother. I appreciate all you guys, and you as well, Sonia. Be good to people today. Be empathetic. You go to the gas station, be nice to the gas station attendant. Be nice to everybody. It's going to make you feel so much better, and it'll help you be more relaxed and think clearly as we're working together over the next several months to continue dealing with what we've been doing and get our freedoms back. So thank you, everybody. I love you all. We'll talk to you soon. I got to run. Okay? Bye-bye.